Today, the Supreme Court of BC will hear evidence in the BC Civil Liberties Association's court case which challenges the laws that make it a crime for doctors who assist in suicide. Dr. Will Johnston is with the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition of Canada, and he joins me in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
So I take it from the name of the organization that you are against doctors being able to assist someone who actually wants out.
Well, Bill, I don't know if you have a daughter, but let's just imagine that your daughter is ill in a serious way, maybe a bad accident or some serious illness, and is away in a spot where you cannot be there to look after her or defend her in any way. And let's imagine that she falls under the sway of someone who does believe in assisted suicide or euthanasia. Currently, you can expect the laws of Canada to be on your side. Your loved one might be surrounded by people who have another agenda. And might be pointed in the direction or steered in the direction of considering suicide for a difficult situation. But if you can't be there to protect her, the laws of Canada are there. The criminal code makes it an offense punishable by up to 14 years in prison to encourage one to commit suicide or to assist them by procuring the fatal dose and so forth. Now, what this case is asking for, let's clarify this is about killing people. This is not necessarily about people who are dying. The list of illnesses that is included in the papers that were served to begin this court case includes things like congestive heart failure. I have patients with congestive heart failure that could live for years or decades. There's no way under the criteria that are being put forward in this case that a young person with diabetes or HIV might not qualify. So we really are talking about a very ambitious program that this court case is taking on. They are trying to, at a stroke, legalize assisted suicide and euthanasia. That is, both removing the defenses and the protections against someone near you, suggesting suicide to you, signing you up for the suicide dose, picking it up from the pharmacy, being there when you die. There's no suggestion of a requirement for independent witnesses. There's no suggestion that it would have to be the doctor doing it. In fact, in the wording of the case, anyone under the general supervision of a doctor, I mean, that could include your neighbor if they've been helping you out by counting out your pills for you in the morning. And so we see some serious defects in this case, not the least that heirs or beneficiaries of an estate could sign their elderly relatives up for assisted suicide or encourage them to go in that direction.
We started out talking about a specific case. Let me set that case aside. Are there circumstances under which you would feel differently? And I'll give you an example, not my daughter, but a former guest that I used to have on the program, an academic, very, very bright fellow, very articulate, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He knew he was terminal, and he said to me, I don't want to die now, but I want to have the right to die when I feel it's no longer worth living. And he said, we have more compassion for our pets than we do for human beings. Many of us have had the unpleasant circumstance of having to have a pet put down when we thought that their life was no longer worth living. He felt he should have that right. He's since passed away.
Yes. Well, there's a big difference. Your pet doesn't get to choose. Your pet doesn't get to choose. And this is being sold to us as a way of enhancing our own choice. So when your pet gets put down for humane reasons, the pet doesn't get to choose, doesn't have any input. And unfortunately, the way these laws tend to have an effect on the general population, we have some serious worries that there are some people that might not get to choose at some point as well. Your friend with a terminal diagnosis was also given a prognosis. He was given a suggestion as to how long he might live. Doctors are wrong all the time. I can say this as a prime example of a doctor who can be wrong from time to time. And we have numerous examples of people who outlive their prognosis. And in fact, it's interesting that the woman whose case is being used as the poster case for this lawsuit was told 2 years ago that she had 6 months or a year to live. Now, you could say that it wouldn't have been a loss to society if she had taken the suicide dose the day she received that terrible prognosis. But personally, I think that she would have thrown away 2 good years of life.
But shouldn't it be her choice?
Well, all of us go out in sympathy and empathy to anyone with a difficult situation. And of course, there is no law against suicide. She always has the choice to commit suicide. That's not what's being asked for in this lawsuit. What's being asked for is to remove the protections in law which make it always a crime to encourage or assist a suicide. And in fact, what's being asked for is a constitutional exemption from prosecution for the assisters, for the people or abusers who surround the victim. In other words, as it stands right now, going back to the example of your daughter, if your daughter died and there were dodgy circumstances surrounding her death, you would have a legal case to pursue there. If the abuser or the assister in suicide could hide behind a Section 7 of the Charter right to be protected from prosecution when they assisted a suicide, you'd have a lot more trouble getting justice.
Talking with Dr. Will Johnston, Euthanasia Prevention Coalition of Canada, and I welcome your calls, 604-280-9898. I smiled because my daughter... Talking with Dr. Will Johnston, the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition of Canada, and I welcome your calls to him, 604-280-9898. The idea of whether or not you should be able to have someone assist you in taking your own life if you think the time has come when you no longer want to live. Dr. Johnston makes a compelling case for not. I'm interested in your thoughts. Keith.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
Love the show. A bit of a long story, but anyway, this happened to me 6 years ago. My wife was 53, diagnosed with terminal cancer, given 6 months to live. She had a small procedure done in the hospital during this, after we knew she was passing away. Anyway, due to circumstance, she ended up on a ventilator. Subsequently, she went on a trach in her neck so we could at least lip read and all this kind of stuff. There was no hope for her. I have 3 kids. We had our 34th wedding anniversary in intensive care, and every day I went in to see my wife knowing she was never coming home. One day, a doctor suggested to her that the trach is a highway to infection. She can get sick really quick, really fast, and very stressful. And if she ever wanted a dignified way out, all she has to do was to ask. Well, 2 weeks later, she did. 4 IVs were put in her, 1 in each arm, 1 in each leg of morphine. 6 hours later, the ventilator was taken out, and she passed away. And she did that for us. That was her decision. She didn't want to see her family just dying every time we went in to see her. So, with all respect to the doctor, that was our decision, a family decision, along with the doctor, and he has no right to tell me I can't do that. That's really all I got to say.
Keith? Keith, let me clear up a misconception here that I think you share with a lot of other people. We're not talking about the condition that your wife was in. This court case is actually not necessarily about people who are dying at all. It sounds like what your wife received was really quite medically acceptable and legal palliative care at a time when she wanted care withdrawn from her. In other words, she had decided that it was futile to continue with the respirator. And she was given appropriate sedation. You must recall
there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, those doctors were being good doctors. And you see, the other side in this struggle always tries to manipulate and misuse a story like the tragedy that Keith's family went through into saying that that's what the issue is all about. Keith's wife fortunately received compassionate care in a situation where the doctors weren't trying to kill her. they were recognizing that she didn't want the trach, she didn't want the ventilator, but her body wasn't going to be able to live on its own as far as they could predict. Now remember, doctors are wrong all the time. There are many instances, Keith, where perhaps not in your wife's case, but where the tube is pulled out, the respirator is turned off, and the person continues to breathe on their own. Sometimes they go on to live a considerable time, sometimes they don't. But we need to, if there's one message that needs to get out here, it's that good sedation and palliation at the end of a difficult illness is not what we're talking about. It's not euthanasia. It's not assisted suicide.
Randy, good morning.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around this whole thing. I mean, you're talking, your guest there says that if a person gets diagnosed by a doctor saying they have 6 months to live, but the doctor could be wrong, that person could go on and live a year from now. Well, it's not like you're going to go into a doctor's office and say, he's going to tell you that you got 6 months to live, and you're going to do yourself in that 6 months. You're talking about people that are very sick and that to a point where maybe they don't want to, go to a hospital and suffer that time. They want to do it at home or whatever. And I don't know what gives anybody the right, except for the family, to go against that and to say you can't do that. If I was in that situation, and I need to do that, I don't see where anybody who doesn't know me has any right at all to tell me I can't do that.
Well, sadly, Rick, Rick, it's not the people that you don't know who often have an opinion and an influence in these cases. And you yourself may be surrounded by people with whom you have a good relationship. But what I see in my practice are sometimes conflicted families where you have different factions within the family arguing over whether the older person should receive the care that they want or not. And you sometimes have a dwindling estate, someone who's sitting on an estate worth X million dollars, but it's dwindling quickly as they get appropriate assisted living or other care. So the scenario you're describing, again, is not exactly what this case is all about. It's actually worse than what you're saying, because in some jurisdictions, young people who have simply become depressed have been given a suicide dose. So we have to make up our mind. I mean, you can't have your foot on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time here. We have a national strategy just passed a month ago by Parliament to try to get our act together on preventing suicide, and I think we would be better off putting our efforts in that direction.
Dave, good morning.
Hi, Bill. Just wondering if I know you're not much of a believer in slippery slopes, but do you think there might be one here?
Well, I don't use the concept of the slippery slope because I think it just comes down to a matter of personal opinion. I would rather focus on the fact that assisted suicide and euthanasia are being sold to us as an enhancement of our individual rights, and yet you have people like Barbara Wagner and Randy Stroop down in Oregon who wanted treatment for their serious illness, and they received word from the Oregon Health Plan that there was no treatment going to be paid for, but that their assisted suicides would be paid for. So I'd say that qualifies, if not as a slippery slope, at least as a predictable deterioration in the attitude of the healthcare system towards the patient. And I am somewhat skeptical of claims that my individual rights are going to be improved by handing more power over to doctors, many of whom I won't know, caregivers, many of whom may be strangers to me at the time, and the healthcare system, which is about to be very strapped for funds. Is that going to enhance my individual rights and privileges to have all of the protections in Canadian law chopped off at the knees? I don't really think so.
Doctor, thank you. Dr. Will Johnston, back after this.